Hi everybody, Ron Placone here. I usually don't weigh in on stuff like this, but I've noticed a lot of stuff on social media lately about comedians talking about bringer shows, and what struck me as a little odd is that a lot of comedians have been kind of in favor of them even, saying that this is the way to go and kind of looking down upon other comedians that are, maybe putting on their own shows or producing their own open mics at other types of venues. And I think this is a bit misdirected, in my personal opinion, and I'm going to talk about why. And first, a quick disclaimer, I am just one comedian with one story and one opinion. That's all I am. There's a ton of comics that have probably had different experiences than me that would disagree with my take on it. Others might agree, maybe, I'm sure some do. I mean, I'm sure not everyone would disagree, but I personally have only done a bringer one time, and I regret it. And I regret it mostly because it'd be really cool for me to say I've never done a bringer, but that wouldn't be the truth. I've done one. When I started in Seattle, Washington, and I was lucky that there was a ton of stage time in town, even at the clubs, and none of the open mics were really bringers. You could get up without doing bringers, which was really cool, and I was lucky to have that opportunity. So I never really did bringers. I kind of came up and never really did bringers at all. And I moved to a different city to go to graduate school a couple years later. And at this point I was, starting to make a little bit of leeway in comedy. I was getting paid somewhat regularly. I wasn't doing it full time yet, but I was, going up the ladder, I guess. And when I got to this this different city, I wanted to start working the clubs there. And the one club in town was not there weren't a ton of opportunities for locals. And one thing that this club did that I know isn't terribly common is they did not allow guest sets. Guest sets weren't allowed unless you went through the headliner directly and they really were like, yeah, this person can do a set. Guest sets weren't allowed. And they also did not let comics in for free. A comic had to pay at the door just like anybody else. So there wasn't even really an opportunity to try to network to get a guest set. So it just wasn't the most, the easiest place to try to get into. So, I asked the bookers there, well, how can I try to work here, and they said, well, doing the once a month they did a bringer, and that was pretty much the only way in the door. So I said, okay, fine. So I played by the rules. I brought people, even though, I've been doing comedy a little bit at this point, I brought people. They paid the cover, which was, in my opinion, grossly overpriced. I think it was either $10 or $15, and they had to still do a 2-drink minimum. Then they sat through a show of mostly people that had never done comedy before, and people that, there was one guy, his whole act was inside jokes to a bunch of his friends, and he brought like 20 of his friends. And they proceeded to kind of talk during the rest of the acts. And so it was a really bad experience. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated that my friends had to pay that kind of money to sit through something like that. They're going out of their way to support me and what I'm doing, and they had to do that. And they probably got a bad taste in their mouth as to what comedy was. A lot of those people have since seen me at a show that I've produced myself, where I brought in comedians that I wanted to bring in, national acts, and I was proud of that show and proud of the amount that I charged for people to get in, and, I was proud to have my friends there. I'm like, I want you to see this guy, I'm going to do 30 minutes too, let's do this. So, but anyway, and I remember talking to my girlfriend that night, and I said, this has been my most negative experience thus far in my comedy career, and I still feel that way to this day. And also, I was hoping to get work at the club. Nobody, not even the wait staff, I don't think, nobody watched my set. Nobody. So that was my experience, and I have not done a bringer since. Nor will I. I mean, at this point, I don't see why I'd ever want to do one. So, first of all, a couple things stick out of that. That is just my experience, not everyone. But those types of shows, usually they aren't organized that great. It's not a good experience for your friends. And it's just not a really positive representation of comedy, I don't think, most of the time. And, you know, the amount of friends that you can pretty much coax and con into getting to sit through your set on a Wednesday night isn't an indicator of how funny you are or how talented you are. It's just an indicator that, you know, you're a popular person or you're just a really good salesperson and you have no problem duping your friends, basically. Because, again, I felt guilty. I apologized to the people that came out. I was embarrassed. And I just don't feel that that's the type of route you want to go for a creative endeavor. Am I telling everyone don't do bringer shows? You know, make your own decisions. I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do. I'm just sharing my experience because, you know, I've seen some stuff like, oh, and these other comics, they're putting on the shows at other places and those shows are stupid, don't even... And my experience is that the only way to get better is stage time. You know, I mean, stage time's very valuable, and just doing a bringer once a month at a comedy club, I don't think that's going to cut it. You know, I think, you know, I think you should get up as many times a week as you can. And I would try to get up almost every night, and I still do. You know, I still do that. I still try to get up all the time. Even if I have a club week, I'll try to get up once or twice before that to kind of work the rust off, try out some new material at an open mic, and I enjoy that. You know, I like that a lot. And most of the open mics I go to aren't at a comedy club. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, but usually they're not. So bringers have had a very negative impact on me. And I just wanted to share that story because, you know, a misconception that I've heard often is, well, you know, if you want to have a career in comedy, you have to do them. The situation might be a little different in New York or LA, so I can't speak for there. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I do comedy full-time right now. And like I said, I've done one bringer and I've regretted it. It has done nothing for my career. All that bringer did for my career was embarrass me in front of my friends one night. That's all it did. So I never did a bringer. I'm doing comedy, you know. I mean, most of the work I get because I developed a good relationship with an agency and took a couple fallout dates, and they saw that I was doing well, so they gave me more work, or I got recommended by another comedian that I crossed paths with, or another booker, or another person in the industry. You know, that's kind of how it works. I have never gotten one paid opportunity where the reason I got that opportunity was because I brought a bunch of people to a bringer show. That's never happened. Again, because I only did one bringer show. So that's my take on it. So if you don't feel comfortable with bringers, if you feel the way I do, where it'd be a horrible night for your friends that you don't want to subject them to, don't do a bringer, because you don't have to. There's other stage time, and, you know, stage time is kind of just the way to go, in my experience. And again, that is just one person's experience. It is just one person's opinion, but I just wanted to throw it out there. So, yeah, thanks a lot.